Your name is nobody. Tomorrow your name will be erased, and your place will be taken by another, just as exhausted, hungry, and nameless as you. The Grand Canal will live for centuries, connecting the wealth of the South to the hunger of the North, feeding an empire that will never remember how many lives it took to dig a single trench. You think you can endure the dirt, the pain, the hunger, and even death. But are you ready to become just another part of the soil, a stone in someone else's foundation, a line in someone else's report? Here, a holiday means surviving. A reward is just one more day without a shovel on your back. And memory is a luxury you cannot afford. What is the price of a road for the emperor's caravans? What is the price of a life that can be replaced with a single mark in a ledger? You are a worker on the Grand Canal, and your main duty is to disappear so that only the water remains. But before you get comfortable, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now, make yourself comfortable. We're starting. You probably think you have control over your own fate, but the state disagrees. One chilly morning, a man in official robes arrives in your town. He is not especially tall, nor especially menacing, but the way he holds his bamboo scroll makes it clear. He does not need to be liked. He does not need to be remembered. He is the messenger, and that is enough. Your name, along with the names of hundreds of others, is read aloud in the square. There is no ceremony, just the dull drone of bureaucratic recitation. This, you realize, is your invitation to history, or rather, your conscription into the long, inglorious footnote of infrastructure. No one shouts, no one even bothers to protest. The selection process has all the flair of counting grain sacks. Congratulations, the official says, with all the warmth of a frog. You have been chosen to assist in the construction of the Great Canal, the waterway that will connect the south and the north of the empire. He does not bother to look you in the eye. His job is done. You are now property of the project. The Great Canal, Changjiang to the Yellow River, thousands of li, or so they say, will be the lifeblood of a unified China. Trade, transport, and the shifting of rice and taxes from the lush south to the hungry north. All this will depend, apparently, on your ability to dig, sweat, and not die of exhaustion. There is a certain pride to be had, perhaps, if you are the sort of person who enjoys being told their misery serves a higher purpose. You go home, pack whatever counts as belongings, usually just your straw hat, a couple of bowls, and the smallest hope that you will not be back soon, and prepare for the journey. Your family tries not to look at you. Their faces are like the wooden masks used for festival plays, unmoving, hiding 100 emotions, none of them especially happy. At night, you lie awake, listening to the neighbors discuss the news in hushed voices. Someone has a cousin who worked on the last emperor's dam, and he never came home. Someone else whispers that the southern lands are so humid your skin never dries. No one mentions that people die on these work sites every day because it is both obvious and unnecessary. The empire is ancient, the water flows endlessly, and you are just one more droplet lost in the current. The next day, you gather at the edge of town. There is a cart for every 10 workers and one ox for every 5 carts. Efficiency, the overseer explains, is the key to greatness. He does not mention that efficiency, in this context, means getting as many bodies to the work site as possible with as little cost as imaginable. You march. The road is long. The dust sticks to your skin, and the only thing heavier than your bundle is the weight of what comes next. The state is not interested in your comfort. If you fall behind, you are left behind. If you complain, you are ignored. The only constant is the sound of your feet, hundreds of pairs, all shuffling toward the same anonymous destiny. By noon, you are already missing home, though you would never admit it. By sunset, you are thinking of ways to feign illness, break an ankle, or vanish into the reeds. But you do not. No one does. Everyone has the same idea, and it is this: if you do not move, you die. If you move, you die later. It is a sort of hope. As darkness falls, you reach the first of many campsites. The official tells you, with his trademark lack of enthusiasm, that you are only a fraction of the total workforce. There are tens of thousands more scattered along the planned length of the canal. Some came willingly, others like you. Most will not return. Rest, he says. Tomorrow you will start the work that will change history. No one laughs, no one speaks. History, you think, can have you. You wake up sore, which is no surprise. Sleeping on packed earth beneath a borrowed blanket is not restorative, despite what the ancient philosophers may claim. Around you, men and boys shift and stretch, each privately measuring how much strength they have left for the journey ahead. There is no breakfast, unless you count a handful of cold rice if you were lucky or clever last night. Mostly, you do not count. The overseer shouts, his voice carrying the same warmth as a crow in winter. The rules are simple. You walk, you keep up, you do not complain. If you must relieve yourself, do it while walking. If you must drink, hope someone will pass you a cracked gourd of water. No one is here to hold your hand, unless it is to drag you back to the line. The convoy sets off along the dirt road, which the government optimistically calls a highway. There are ruts deep enough to swallow an ox hoof and stones sharp enough to cut sandals to ribbons. Occasionally, a local stares from a doorway, their expression carved from equal parts pity and relief. Pity because they see you, relief because it is not their name on the register. You quickly learn the rhythm of the march. You walk for 2 hours, rest for 10 minutes, walk for another 2. Sometimes the rest is cut short if the sky darkens with the threat of rain, which turns the road into a sucking morass that will swallow cartwheels and, if you are unlucky, your best sandals. The overseers claim the walk will only take a few days, but their sense of time is as unreliable as their promises of safety. For the truly unlucky, the journey alone is enough to kill. Along the way, you hear the stories. Someone was pressed into service last year and never made it past the second day, lost to fever and the bad air that settles in the valleys. Someone else says the canal route passes through ancient burial grounds, and the dead are restless, eager for company. You ignore the tales because it is easier to focus on your feet than on your future. The nights are a study in discomfort. The men pile together for warmth, swatting at mosquitoes thick enough to form their own province. The smarter ones sleep with cloth over their faces, though the air is heavy with the sense of sweat, damp straw, and the ever present knowledge that tomorrow will be worse. A man in the next group mutters about his home, how he left behind his mother, a wife, children he may never see again. You do not speak. The truth is, you are all the same now. The canal is your only family. On the third day, a cart overturns in a ditch. The driver curses, the ox bellows, and you stand idle while the officials debate whether the supplies can be salvaged. In the end, the rice is scattered, the salt ruined, the dried fish quickly pilfered by the boldest men. The rest of you learn a valuable lesson. If you want to eat, you need to be fast and a little ruthless. No one punishes the thieves. The loss is already calculated in someone's account book. As you move farther from civilization, the world grows wilder. The forests crowd the road, sending out roots that trip the unwary and branches that scratch exposed arms. At night, you hear wolves, or perhaps it is just hungry dogs. Either way, you draw closer to the fires. Sometimes a worker goes missing, but the overseers do not bother searching. It is one less mouth to feed and one more story to keep the rest of you obedient. By the end of the week, your feet are blistered, your shoulders sunburned, and your stomach is as hollow as a drum. Yet somehow, you keep moving. The human body, you realize, can endure far more than you ever imagined, provided it has no other choice. The mind grows numb. You watch the line of men, some tall, some stooped, some with the haunted look of those who know too much, stretching out ahead of you like a living thread. On the morning of the seventh day, the land opens up. There is no more road, just a vast, muddy plain crisscrossed by makeshift camps, piles of tools, and everywhere people, so many people that for a moment you feel small enough to disappear. Here's where the canal will be born, from sweat and mud and the kind of hope that only governments can afford. The overseer announces your arrival with a grunt. There are no welcoming speeches, no banners, just the promise that work will begin at sunrise. You are issued a number, no name, not anymore, and pointed toward a corner of the camp where there might be enough straw to sleep on. Someone hands you a chipped clay bowl. If you lose it, you will not eat. If you break it, you will not eat. If you dare to ask for another, you will definitely not eat. You sit, exhausted, watching the sun sink behind the unfinished skeleton of a barracks. Tomorrow, they say, you will start building history. Tonight, you will try to remember who you used to be. You do not succeed. You awaken before dawn to the sound of shouting. At first, you think it is a nightmare, a noise from some memory of home, but then you realize it is merely the start of your new reality. There is no transition between sleep and waking here, only a change in the color of the sky. You shuffle from your straw mat into a line of men that snakes across the mud. No one speaks unless it is necessary. There is no energy for small talk, and besides, the overseers have ears everywhere. You clutch your chipped bowl and receive a thin ladle of rice porridge. If you are lucky, there is a slice of pickled turnip floating in it. The taste is as gray as the morning. For the first time, you see the scale of the project. The camp, which felt crowded last night, is just a tiny outpost at the edge of something immeasurable. Beyond the lines of tents and fires, the ground is stripped bare, a raw wound carved into the land. The air smells of wet clay, sweat, and something older, like river mud that has not seen sunlight in 100 generations. Someone says the canal will stretch for thousands of li. Someone else claims it is the longest construction site in the world, though you cannot imagine a world large enough to contain so much suffering. The earth is scored with trenches, shallow in some places, deep in others, as if an army of giant worms had been gnawing at the ground. Wooden scaffolds rise and collapse in the wind. Men swarm over them, carrying baskets of earth on poles balanced across their shoulders. The overseer assigns you to a work group. Your foreman is a man with a voice like gravel and a face like an old boot. He does not bother to learn your name. Instead, he points to a pile of shovels and says, "If you want to live, pick one up." You believe him. The shovel is heavy, its handle worn smooth by the hands of those who have come before you. You wonder what happened to them, but you know better than to ask. Your first task is simple: move earth from here to there. There is a rhythm to it: scoop, lift, carry, dump, repeat. It is a rhythm that will become your heartbeat, your breath, your life. You try not to think about how little progress you are making. Each load of dirt seems to disappear into the landscape, swallowed whole by the hungry canal. Around you, the others work in silence. Some have faces so lined with exhaustion they seem carved from the same clay you dig. A few are so young they still have hope in their eyes. You do not know which is worse. The foreman tells you to be careful. The soil here is treacherous, soft beneath a crust of gravel. Once, last week, 3 men were buried alive when a wall of earth collapsed. Their bodies were dug out and burned, their ashes scattered to the river. It was quicker that way, someone says, and less expensive than a funeral. You wonder if your family will ever hear what happened to you, if they will grieve, or simply accept the news as one more fact of life. By noon, the sun is high, and the air shimmers with heat. Sweat soaks your clothes, turning the dust to mud on your skin. You begin to understand why the canal requires so many men. The work is endless, the earth inexhaustible. For every basket you carry away, it feels as if two more appear in its place. The overseers keep count, though their math seems suspect. Sometimes you think they add extra loads to punish the slow or the stubborn. You share your lunch, a handful of millet cakes and a cup of weak tea, with the man beside you. His name is Lou. He used to be a farmer, he says, though he cannot remember when he last saw a green field. You nod. Here, everyone is something else. A soldier turned laborer, a merchant turned beggar, a scholar turned beast of burden. The canal does not care. In the afternoon, you watch the supervisors patrol the trenches. They ride on horseback, their boots spotless, their faces shaded by wide hats. They shout orders, crack whips, and occasionally stop to admire the progress. It is easy to feel invisible here, just another shadow in the dust. You wonder if that is a mercy. At sunset, the work stops, but only because the foreman says it must. The air cools, and the mud turns back to dust. You stagger back to camp, muscles aching, hands blistered, feet raw. You eat what little you are given and listen as the other men tell stories about the old world, the world before the canal. Someone sings a song, quiet and broken. No one joins in. You fall asleep beneath the open sky, the stars sharp and uncaring above you. You dream of home, but when you wake, you remember only the earth. The canal is all there is now. It is your world, your prison, your grave. Tomorrow, you will dig again. Morning does not so much arrive as it creeps in, seeping through the damp cloth you use for a blanket, clinging to your skin like regret. You wake sore, uncertain if you ever really slept or merely drifted for a while in the cold and dark. Someone prods you with a toe, your foreman or one of his many friends. It hardly matters. The days have begun to blur together. You stand in line, your bowl cupped in both hands. The porridge is thinner today, if that is possible, and the pickled turnip is only a memory. Someone mutters that the supply wagons are late, but you know better than to hope. Hope is as scarce here as meat in the soup. Today, you are given a new task, though the details sound suspiciously familiar. Dig, carry, dump, repeat. The foreman gestures to a section of the trench that looks exactly like every other section, except perhaps this one is muddier, or a little deeper, or the clay is more stubborn. You are given a shovel, its handle cracked and splintered. You consider briefly asking for another, but a glance at the foreman's face is answer enough. The technique is simple. You drive the shovel into the earth, twist, lift, and hope the blade does not snap. You empty your load into the basket at your feet, then heft it onto your back and trudge to the dumping ground, a small mountain of mud that seems, impossibly, to grow faster than you can fill it. When the basket is empty, you return and begin again. This is your universe now, a circle of mud, sweat, and aching joints. Around you, Dozens of men perform the same ritual. Some are efficient, their movements almost graceful. Others, new arrivals, or the old, or simply unlucky, struggle. A supervisor passes by, pausing now and then to record numbers on a bamboo slip. You are not sure what he writes. Perhaps he counts the baskets, or perhaps he counts the workers who will not last another day. He never looks you in the eye. Your hands blister quickly. You try wrapping them in strips of cloth torn from your shirt, but the mud seeps through, and the fabric only makes the blisters softer, easier to split. By noon, your palms are raw and bleeding, but you do not stop. To rest is to risk a beating, or worse, a mark against your name in the supervisor's ledger, a mark that could mean less food, or harder work, or a visit from the men with the sticks. Lunch is more porridge. Sometimes you dream of salted fish, or a crisp pear, or even the hard crust of last autumn's bread. Here, the food is always the same, a gray slop that tastes of nothing, but fills the space in your belly where hunger would otherwise live. You sit with Liu, your companion from yesterday, and neither of you speaks. Words are precious here and often wasted. In the afternoon, the weather changes. A cold wind rises from the river, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of misery. The mud turns slick, and every step becomes a gamble. A man near you slips, his basket spilling into the trench. The foreman curses and orders him to refill it by hand. You do not laugh, you are too tired for cruelty. You notice something new, a line of younger workers, perhaps no more than boys, straining under the weight of a wooden beam. They are building a frame, or perhaps reinforcing a wall that threatens to collapse. Their faces are pinched with concentration and fear. You wonder what brought them here. Bad luck, worse family, or just the endless hunger of the empire. By sunset, your arms feel made of lead, your back of wood. The foreman inspects your work, poking the mound of earth with his stick, as if searching for some hidden flaw. He grunts, makes a mark on his slip, and moves on. You sag with relief, though you know tomorrow will be exactly the same, or worse. As the light fades, you clean your shovel in a bucket of water so brown it is almost solid. You count your fingers, then your toes, then the days since you arrived, but lose track before you reach yesterday. Someone starts a fire. The warmth is small comfort, barely enough to chase the chill from your bones. Around you, men whisper about home or drink fermented rice water from a stolen gourd or simply stare into the darkness. You wonder briefly what would happen if you refused to work tomorrow, if you simply lay in the mud and became another nameless casualty of progress. But you know the answer. The canal would swallow you, as it has swallowed so many others, and the work would go on. The empire would not notice your absence. The river would not remember your name. Tonight you fall asleep with your hands wrapped in rags, your back pressed to the earth, and your dreams full of mud. Tomorrow, the assignment will be the same. The rain finally comes at dawn. At first, it is gentle, a promise whispered against the canvas of your tent. But promises are never kept here. Soon the drizzle swells to a downpour, drumming on the roofs, turning the packed dirt beneath you to soup. You awaken already damp. By the time you rise, you are soaked through. Rain changes everything. The mud thickens, becoming a force of nature unto itself, greedy and alive. Each step is a negotiation with the earth, your feet sucked down as if the canal itself wants to claim you before you have done any work at all. The overseer says rain is good, softens the ground, makes it easier to dig. He says this from under a broad brimmed hat, standing dry beneath a canvas awning. You doubt he has ever touched a shovel. You shuffle out with the others. The rain fills the trenches, turning them to shallow rivers. The water is everywhere, running down your face, pooling in your collar, seeping through your shoes, gathering in your sleeves. You shovel mud into baskets, but now each load weighs double, the earth clinging together in a solid mass. Men slip and fall, some losing their baskets entirely, others simply losing the will to get up. The foreman yells, but the mud swallows his words too. After only a few days of rain, a new companion arrives: disease. It travels swiftly, carried by the water, bred in the warm, stagnant puddles that collect everywhere. The older men recognize it immediately: a fever, a weakness in the limbs, a sudden sickness in the belly. You watch as strong backs double over, as men who could lift their own weight in mud are felled by an enemy they cannot see. You learn the signs quickly. The sick become quiet, moving slower each day. Their skin grows pale and their eyes glaze. At night, they lie awake, shivering, sweating through their ragged blankets. Sometimes they do not wake up at all. When this happens, the overseers come at dawn, dragging the bodies away in the same carts used for hauling earth. No one says a word. To speak of sickness is to invite it. The work must go on. If you are strong, you carry the load of two men, your own and that of the one who did not return. If you are weak, you pray the fever passes you by. There are no doctors here, only herbalists with bitter teas and faith in lucky charms. Sometimes a supervisor hands out powders that taste of chalk and false hope. More often, you are simply told to rest, which in practice means lying near the edge of camp, waiting to be forgotten. The camp itself becomes a breeding ground for misery. The rain pools under the tents, mixing with spilled rice and rotten turnip. Flies buzz everywhere, thick and hungry. The latrines, dug in haste at the start of the season, fill and overflow, leaking their foul contents into the channels cut for drainage. Every surface is slick, every step a risk. The canal's growing trench becomes a ribbon of mud and bodies. Sometimes a worker slips while carrying his load and vanishes into the muck. If he is lucky, others are close enough to drag him free. If not, he becomes another layer in the foundation, buried beneath the ambition of emperors. You do not dwell on these stories, they are too common to be remarkable. At night, the cold settles in. You huddle with Lou, sharing what little dry cloth you have, listening to the endless drip of water from the tent roof. The coughs and moans of the sick fill the darkness, a grim chorus you cannot ignore. Some men try to cheer themselves with tales of home, jokes about their old villages, or the food they once ate, or women they once knew. The laughter is thin and does not last. There are rumors that the southern stretches of the canal are even worse. There, they say, the heat never fades and the rain never ends. The air is thick with insects, and the water runs black with disease. Men disappear by the hundreds, replaced by new recruits as quickly as they vanish. You wonder if you will ever see these fabled southern lands. You wonder if you would survive even a day there. By the end of the week, you have grown used to the taste of mud in your mouth, the smell of wet earth on your skin. Your body aches, your hands bleed, but you are still here. The overseers consider this a triumph of planning, an achievement in organization. You consider it simple luck, nothing more. One morning, you awake to find the rain has stopped. The air is thick and heavy, the canal a mirror of still water and broken men. The foreman calls you to work, his voice hoarse from shouting. You rise, shovel in hand, and return to the mud. Disease may come and rain may fall, but the canal is always hungry. You dig, you sweat, you cough, and you wait. You wait for sun, for health, for the impossible chance that you might one day walk away from this place. For now, you are just another body in the mud, another heartbeat in the endless rhythm of water, earth, and slow decay. You are not an engineer. In fact, most days you doubt you are even a person anymore, just a collection of aches, blisters, and half remembered instructions. But on the canal, everyone learns to notice things, if only to survive. Today, your lesson is in the marvels and miseries of progress. The engineers, when they appear, come in two varieties. The first kind is old, with beards streaked with white, and eyes that never leave their ledgers. They speak in riddles about gradients, flow rates, and the mysteries of water levels. The second kind is young, eager, with the sort of optimism that only exists in people who have not yet seen a trench collapse. You learn quickly that the old engineers ignore you entirely, while the young ones ask questions you do not understand and seldom wait for your answer. In the muddy field, you watch as a group of specialists argue over a wooden pole, a knotted rope, and a small brass bowl filled with water. This, they say, is a device for measuring slope. One man holds the pole upright, while another squints at a string tied to the top. After much debate, they nod, draw lines in the dirt, and declare that the canal must bend here, or the water will flow backward. You are not convinced, neither is the canal. Later that week, their precision is undone by a night of rain, and the trench they so carefully marked fills up with water, flowing exactly the wrong way. Still, there is method to the madness. You hear whispers about the grand designs behind the project. The canal, after all, is meant to connect the mighty Yangtze River with the stubborn, sand choked Yellow River, uniting the riches of the South with the hungry North. The difference in height between the two is more than one can easily see, but the engineers have invented clever ways to trick the water into obeying. They build primitive locks and sluices from stone and timber, assembling gates to hold or release the current at will. You marvel at the logic of it, while you haul buckets and curse your fate. Others are moving rivers. Of course, most of the discoveries are made at your expense. You learn quickly that the clay beneath your feet is treacherous, its surface hard, but its heart soft and shifting. Walls collapse without warning, and what stood in the morning may be gone by nightfall. The engineers mutter about soil samples and foundation stones, but when the earth caves in, it is you who digs out the trapped and the dead. There is endless talk of efficiency. Someone invents a pulley system to raise the mud out of deeper trenches, stringing ropes and wooden wheels between two wobbly posts. For a few hours, the baskets seem lighter, the work easier. Then the rope snaps, the pulley falls, and a man is left with a broken arm. The engineers revise their plans. You revise your dreams. Now you wish only for a day without injuries. Surveyors walk the length of the project, measuring with rods and bits of knotted twine. They mark the land with colored flags, red for cut, blue for fill, yellow for someone else's problem. You learn to dread the blue flags, which mean hauling baskets uphill to fill in a low spot, doubling your work for reasons that only make sense to someone with soft hands. At lunch, Lou tries to explain a miracle he witnessed. The engineers have found a way to line parts of the canal with bricks, fired in massive kilns near the work site. The bricks are hauled and stacked by hand, each one a minor victory against the mud. It is slow work, but the lined sections do not collapse as often. You nod, unimpressed. A brick is still just another thing to carry. Sometimes you catch sight of the master engineer himself, a man who speaks with the overseers as if they are equals and carries a scroll case at all times. He surveys the mess, offers a few words of encouragement. The emperor expects greatness and then disappears. The overseers bow, the work continues, and the canal grows a little longer. Greatness, you suspect, is easier to expect than to achieve. The innovations come with cost. To test new locks, whole teams are sent to haul water by bucket from the river, filling freshly dug basins until the system is ready. You help build a temporary dam, plugging the gaps with clay and hope, then watch as the engineers nod in satisfaction and release the water, only for it to burst through a weak spot, flooding the trenches and erasing a day's labor in minutes. There are days when the experiments go better. A new type of shovel arrives, its blade slightly curved, designed to cut through sticky earth. You test it, discover it works marginally better, and promptly lose it to the foreman who claims it for his personal use. Progress, you decide, is a trickle that rarely reaches the bottom ranks. By nightfall, you are covered in mud, your hands sore from the endless lifting, and your mind sore from the endless talk of breakthroughs. You sit by the fire, listening to Lou muse about all the things men can build with enough time and enough bodies. You nod, thinking of the canal, the world's longest grave for both ideas and men. Tomorrow, the engineers will have new discoveries. Tomorrow, you will have the same shovel, the same mud, the same aching back. History, you realize, is written in clever plans and cleverer excuses. But for now, you just hope the next great innovation does not require you to work any harder than you already do. You never thought much about food before the canal. You ate what was given: plain rice, salted greens, the occasional scrap of fish, and called it life. Here, food is all anyone thinks about. It becomes the central fact of your day, the only topic of conversation that never grows old or dangerous. The morning meal is a parody of breakfast. Watery rice served with the remains of yesterday's pickled radish. Sometimes the radish is more water than vegetable. Sometimes it is nothing at all. The foreman claims the supply carts are delayed by floods. You suspect the cooks have simply grown tired of lying. By mid-morning, you are hungry again. The work is relentless, each motion burning through your meager reserves. You dream of meat, pork stewed until soft, chicken roasted over a real fire, even a handful of beans. Instead, you gnaw on a sliver of dried turnip found by luck at the bottom of your pocket. It tastes like regret. The camp is full of rumors about food. Someone says there is a black market for salt fish smuggled in by bold teamsters who risk a beating for profit. Someone else claims to have seen a bag of fresh apples destined for the engineer's table. You never see the apples yourself, but the idea alone is enough to start a fight. Lunch arrives in a battered cauldron. The line is long, and the bowl is your only ticket. Those who have lost or broken theirs beg for a share, but the servers turn them away with stony faces. You hold your bowl with both hands, as if it were an heirloom. Today's fare is a thin millet gruel with a handful of wild greens floating in it. A dragonfly lands on the rim and is quickly swatted away. Too valuable to waste, you joke to Lou. He does not laugh. The best days are when the kitchens manage a scrap of pork fat, boiled to transparency and doled out in pieces no larger than a coin. The taste is a shock, so rich and greasy you can feel it in your teeth. For a moment, you remember home, your mother's kitchen, the hiss of onions in a clay pot, the rare festival meals that left you sleepy and full. The memory is almost painful. Sometimes men receive parcels from home, flat cakes of barley, a bag of chestnuts, dried shrimp wrapped in oilskin. These treasures are guarded jealously, hidden from view, and shared only with the closest of friends, if at all. It is a strange thing, the way food changes people. You see men who once would have given you the shirt off their back now hoarding crumbs with the vigilance of cornered rats. There are those who try to cheat hunger. Some sneak into the engineer's quarters after dark, hunting for leftovers. Most find only bones, stripped clean, or stale rice caked to the bottom of a pot. A few risk the wilds, setting traps for rabbits or birds in the scrub beyond camp. The success stories are rare and often exaggerated. More common are tales of sickness, a handful of mushrooms mistaken for dinner, a fish pulled from the canal that leaves three men feverish and sweating for days. One afternoon, the foreman gathers everyone and delivers a speech about rations. He explains, in the careful language of someone reading a notice from higher up, that the food situation is challenging and that everyone must do their part. You notice his belly strains the ties of his robe. You do not point this out. The foreman has a long memory and a short temper. As the days grow hotter, the food situation worsens. The supply carts do arrive sometimes, but their contents are never as promised. Rice turns moldy in the humid air. Beans rot in the sacks. Even the salt, meant to preserve what little meat there is, cakes into useless lumps. The cooks do what they can, stretching meals with wild greens, dried leaves, anything that can be boiled into something vaguely edible. Your belly aches, but you eat anyway. Hunger does strange things. You begin to think you can smell food where none exists, a drifting whiff of pork, a sweet memory of fruit. Sometimes your stomach cramps so badly you double over, teeth clenched against the pain. The old men say it will pass, that hunger is like a river. It flows, it ebbs, it leaves you hollow but alive. At night, the talk around the fire is always about food. Stories grow with each telling. Feasts in far off villages, banquets in the city, a fish so large it fed an entire family for a week. The younger men listen wide eyed. The older men smile, remembering or pretending to remember. You watch the flames, feeling the ache in your belly, and wonder if you will ever eat until you are full again. Sometimes, when you are very tired, you dream of a banquet, a long table, heavy with bowls of steaming rice, roast duck, dumplings stuffed with pork and scallions. You reach for a bowl, but your hands pass through it. You wake up biting your own tongue. The next morning, you find your ration is smaller than ever. The foreman says the road was washed out, the carts delayed, the fields to the south ruined by flood. You shovel your food into your mouth anyway, chewing each mouthful until it is gone. You are not full, but you are not empty either. This, you decide, is what it means to live on the canal. You go back to work, dreaming of food you will never taste, in a world where hunger is as constant as the mud beneath your feet. In a place like this, escape is the most dangerous word. You learn not to say it, not even as a joke. Instead, you hear it whispered at night, half buried beneath the snoring and coughs and the soft, wet sound of rats scurrying under the pallets. Escape is always someone else's story, never yours, until the day it is. Every morning, the roll call is conducted with the same grim ceremony. The overseer reads from his list, pausing only when someone's answer is missing. There is never any confusion, never a moment of hope that a man might simply be sick or sleeping late. If a name is called and silence follows, the verdict is immediate. Gone. A mark in the ledger, a muttered curse, and then the numbers move on. You learn quickly that not all who vanish have escaped. Some are carried out by the fever, some disappear into the mud at the bottom of a collapsed trench. But then there are the others, the dreamers, the desperate, those who believe there is a life beyond the canal. Their absence hangs in the air, heavier than the damp fog that settles every dawn. There are 100 stories about escape, each more absurd than the last. Lou tells you of a man who dug a tunnel under the latrine and crawled away at midnight, only to emerge in the next work camp down the river, more lost than ever. Someone else claims to have seen a pair of brothers swim the canal at its widest point, dodging patrols and water snakes only to be dragged back by a troop of soldiers, blue with cold and trembling with hunger. No one escapes alone, or at least, no one does for long. The canal is watched day and night, the perimeter patrolled by soldiers whose boredom is matched only by their brutality. They are not the shining heroes of the Empire's proclamations. They are men like you, sent here for one mistake too many, their loyalty measured in rations and threats. If a prisoner is caught outside the lines, the punishment is swift, a beating, public and memorable. Sometimes men are chained to Goer as a warning, sometimes they simply disappear. Despite the risks, the urge to escape grows in the cracks of every conversation. The hunger, the disease, the endless toil, these are the facts that push men beyond reason. You find yourself thinking about the road home, the feel of dry earth under your feet, the taste of food cooked in your own pot. It is a dangerous comfort. One evening, after a day of rain and wasted effort, a rumor passes through the camp like fever. Someone has slipped away during the night. No one knows who or if the story is true, but it is enough to send the overseers into a rage. For 3 days, the work gangs are doubled and the rations halved. Each tent is searched, every pile of rags overturned. You keep your head down and your hands busy, as if guilt could be washed away with mud. During these days, you see the ingenuity of desperation. Some men sew extra pockets into their clothes, stuffing them with dried beans and old crusts, ready to run if the chance ever comes. Others practice walking silently, learning to mimic the shuffle of the guards' patrols. A few try to make friends with the cooks, hoping for a word of warning if things go bad. But escape is never a plan. It is an impulse, a spark in the dark. The successful stories are rare and precious. There is the tale of the old carpenter who tied logs together and floated downstream under cover of mist, never to be seen again. The foreman calls him a coward, but the camp remembers him as a hero. There is another about the mute boy who climbed a supply cart and hid beneath sacks of rice, his small body unnoticed as the oxen plodded out of sight. These stories are cherished, told and retold as proof that the canal is not forever. Most attempts fail. You remember the man from your own crew, strong as an ox, who slipped away during the noon break. He was gone for a day, maybe two. When the soldiers brought him back, he was little more than a lesson, his back striped with lashes, his face blank as uncut stone. He never spoke again, not even to beg for water. After that, escape became a quieter dream, a hope whispered to the stars. Sometimes you wonder if you would try, if the right moment came. You count the guards, study the shifts, memorize the holes in the fence. You hoard a few crumbs, a stolen nail, a length of string. But in the end, you always return to your shovel. The risks are too high, the price too steep. Survival, you decide, is its own kind of resistance. The overseers, for their part, prefer fear to trust. Each new escape attempt is met with more rules, more patrols, more punishments for all. They read out lists of missing men each morning, their voices dull with repetition. Sometimes they make examples of the ringleaders. Sometimes they simply add another name to the long, growing list. And so the days go on. You dig, you sweat, you watch, and you wait. At night, you lie awake, listening to the quiet shuffle of feet and the distant, hopeless whisper of escape. Freedom here is both a curse and a blessing, a story you tell yourself to make the next day bearable, a dream that vanishes in the gray light of dawn. If you ever forget that you are not free, the soldiers will remind you. They are everywhere, at the camp gates on the river banks, standing on makeshift towers built from stolen scaffolding. You see them in the morning, sharp-eyed and stiff-backed, counting bodies as if you are no different from the heaps of stone and mud. You see them in the evening, lounging with cups of rice wine, their boots clean, their voices carrying in the dark. In the cold light of dawn, they are the first thing you see. In the long, stifling dusk, they are the last. These are not the grand soldiers of legend, no proud warriors in bright armor, no noble defenders of the realm. Most look like you, or like your older brother, or like the boy from your village who vanished after an unlucky dice game. Their uniforms are threadbare, patched and dirty. Their swords, when drawn, are nicked and spotted with rust, some limp from old wounds. Some have faces too young for the lines already etched into them, but they carry power, which is its own kind of armor. Their voices cut through the daily chaos. Their sticks and whips, gifts from the overseers, leave marks that last for weeks. Sometimes they enforce the rules with a weary formality, as if reading from a script. Sometimes they act with the casual cruelty of men who know there will be no consequences. You learn quickly to avoid their gaze, to never draw their attention, to become part of the background. Officially, the soldiers are here to protect you from bandits, from wild animals, from the ghosts that haunt the empty places of the empire. You never see any bandits. and the only animals bold enough to approach the camp are the rats. As for ghosts, you suspect the soldiers create more than they banish. Mostly, they are here to keep you working. The canal's progress is measured not in distance, but in compliance. If you pause to rest too long, a soldier's shadow falls across your back, and the point of his staff urges you on. If your group falls behind the others, soldiers arrive to motivate you. Their methods are simple: shouts, blows, sometimes a stint of special duty, clearing latrines or digging ditches with your bare hands. They say it builds character. You think it builds calluses and a new appreciation for invisibility. The soldiers themselves live better than you. Their camp sits slightly uphill above the worst of the mud. Their tents are drier, their rice bowls fuller, their fires warmer. Sometimes, when rations are short, a few soldiers will borrow food from the workers' kitchens. An extra scoop of rice here, a handful of beans there. Complaining is pointless. In the calculus of the canal, soldiers always eat first. You hear stories, of course, whispered after dark. A sergeant who took pity on a sick man and snuck him some boiled pork fat. A patrol leader who allowed a desperate laborer to rest under his tarp during a rainstorm. These both are remembered as saints, their kindnesses inflated with each telling. But for every story of mercy, there are 5 of malice. The boy caught stealing a yam, beaten until he could not walk. The woman from the cook's camp, made an example for hiding flour under her bed. Mercy is rare and never lasts long. Once a month, the soldiers stage a parade. It is not for your benefit, but for the overseers and, on rare occasions, the imperial inspectors. The men line up in crooked rows, trying to remember the steps they learned as boys. Their commander, a thick-necked man with a voice like a drum, bellows orders until his face turns red. The workers are lined up as well, forced to cheer on cue, as if grateful for this show of discipline and strength. The charade fools no one, but it fills the reports sent back to the capital. Discipline is a constant threat. The punishments are as varied as the men who mete them out. Sometimes it is a public beating, the victim's screams echoing through camp. Sometimes it is extra labor, hauling stones through the night while the others sleep. For the truly unlucky, it is confinement in a wooden cage, left out in the rain until body and spirit break. You try not to think about these things, but it is hard to ignore the evidence: scars, limps, faces that will not meet your eyes. The soldiers are also the canal's last line of defense against escape. Their watch shifts change with the moon, their routes as unpredictable as hunger. You learn to read their moods. When they are bored, they talk more, drink more, their vigilance slips. When they are anxious, you move quietly, quickly, blending with the crowd. The best chance for escape, if there is such a thing, is during chaos, storms, accidents, festival days, when even the soldiers are distracted by noise and drink. Some of the soldiers grow old here, never returning to their homes in the north or the west. You see their faces each day, a little harder, a little emptier. Some leave abruptly, carried off by fever, or summoned back to the capital for some new war. A few disappear without explanation, and their names are never spoken again. There are moments, rare and dangerous, when a soldier will look at you and see not a worker, but a man, tired, hungry, alive. In those moments, you catch a glimpse of what the canal could have been if only men treated each other with decency. But such moments are gone in a blink, buried beneath routine and fear. The sun rises, the soldiers stand ready, the canal waits for your labor. You dig, you obey, you endure. In the shadows at the edge of camp, the soldiers watch. They are not your enemies, not exactly, but they are the wall you cannot climb, the river you cannot cross, the silent witnesses to your slow, careful struggle against the empire's hunger. You hear a lot about the grand plan. It is always grand, always spoken with a capital G, always just out of reach. In the engineer's scrolls, the canal stretches like a silver ribbon, smooth and perfect, joining the empire's greatest rivers in a show of unity and power. In the overseers' mouths, the grand plan is a weapon. Remember why you are here. You serve the future of the Middle Kingdom. In the workers' tents, it is a joke, shared over thin soup and thinner hopes. The truth is that grand plans have little to do with daily life on the canal. On paper, the route is straight and the laborers are tireless. In reality, the land twists and rises, water floods and ebbs, and men fail, break, and disappear. The gap between ambition and outcome is measured in blisters, broken tools, and the occasional scream echoing down a collapsing trench. Sometimes you catch glimpses of the planners themselves, men with ink-stained fingers and clean boots, pacing the banks and pointing at nothing in particular. They argue about flow rates, soil types, and water tables, as if the world might finally agree to follow their lines on the map. You try not to listen, but the sound carries. If we just divert this stream, if we build the embankment here instead, if, if, if. The grand plan is always just one more revision away from perfection, but the failures are not theoretical. They are all around you, written in mud and bone. You remember the first time a trench wall collapsed, a dull rumble, a shout, and then silence. By the time help arrived, the earth had swallowed 3 men. They dug with bare hands, cursing and weeping, until someone finally called it off. The engineers blamed the rain. The foreman blamed the workers. The canal simply waited. Floods are the most common disaster. The water is always moving, restless, hunting for weak spots. You learn to watch for small leaks, tiny springs bubbling up where the clay is thin. Sometimes the whole work site is submerged overnight, and your world becomes a lake of brown water and floating refuse. Everything stops while the water recedes, but the overseers count the delay as another mark against your crew. The grand plan does not allow for excuses. Other times, the ground betrays you. There are places where the soil seems solid, but is actually nothing more than centuries of silt. soft and treacherous beneath a brittle crust. You step in the wrong place and sink up to your knees, or worse, you have seen a man vanish to the waist in less than a heartbeat, his friends pulling him out by the arms while the mud pulls back with equal force. When the foremen talk about unexpected subsidence, you think of men who do not return. There are smaller failures too, the kind that grind you down day by day. Tools break, shovels snap, baskets unravel, ropes fray at the worst moment. A few clever men try to repair things with strips of bamboo or borrowed wire, but the best fixes never last long. Supplies promised by the capital arrive months late or not at all. Once, you were sent to fetch a load of bricks that turned out to be nothing more than a rumor. Someone misread a message, and the whole section of canal waited 2 weeks for a delivery that never came. Rumors fill the gaps left by broken promises. Some say the canal is cursed, haunted by the restless spirits of all those who have died in its service. Others whisper about saboteurs, disgruntled workers, bandits, even rival officials who dig holes in the embankments at night just to watch them collapse at dawn. The overseers laugh at these stories, but they sleep with swords within reach. Every so often, an official arrives from the capital, riding in a litter with silk curtains to keep out the dust. He makes a show of inspecting the works, listening to the engineer's explanations, then declares that progress is satisfactory. After he leaves, everyone works twice as hard to repair the damage caused by hasty construction and corner cutting. You learn to dread these visits. The grand plan must look good from a distance, even if it is held together by sweat and lies. Some failures are simply ignored. You hear stories from the southern sites where workers dig for months only to realize they are on the wrong side of a hill. The engineers quietly reroute the plan, and the old trench is filled in, a monument to human error. Once, you met a man who claimed to have spent an entire summer building a lock system that no one could figure out how to use. The water goes in, the water goes out, he said, and nobody knows where it's supposed to end up. You nodded, because that sounded like everything here. Through it all, the work continues. You dig, you carry, you build, and sometimes you bury. The grand plan is updated, rewritten, covered in red ink and dirty fingerprints. The small failures pile up, but the project lurches forward, as unstoppable as the river itself. If anyone asks, the answer is always the same. It is going well. There is progress. You realize, after a while, that the canal is built as much on failure as on mud and stone. Every collapsed wall, every flooded camp, every vanished man is a lesson, a tiny improvement in the great machinery of empire. You are not building a canal. You are being built by it, remade every day by disappointment and survival. At night, lying on your straw mat, you wonder if the grand plan ever accounted for the lives spent along the way. If it did, the numbers are written small and easily erased. The first time they let the water flow, You expect something monumental. After months of digging, shifting, cursing, and watching your sweat disappear into mud, it is easy to imagine the canal's opening as a kind of festival, drums beating, banners unfurling, cheers echoing from one end of the project to the other. In reality, it is quieter, messier, and, as always, tinged with disaster. The engineers call it a test run. You and 100 others are ordered to stand along the freshly dug channel, ready with shovels, poles, and hastily woven baskets. You have been warned, by rumor more than by command, that if the water overflows or finds a weakness in the embankment, it will not politely wait for anyone to fix the problem. The canal, in the end, belongs to the water, not the workers. It begins with the removal of a single wooden board. The engineers fuss and argue, checking their water clocks and clay models one last time. Finally, a young apprentice pries loose the plank, and the river, as if waiting all along, surges into the empty channel. The water is brown, restless, thick with silt and broken twigs. At first, it moves sluggishly, hugging the base of the embankment, uncertain of its new path. You hear a few scattered cheers, mostly from the engineers, who watch like anxious parents seeing a child's first steps. Then the water gains confidence, spreading out, picking up speed, and carrying with it everything that has not been anchored or removed. Clods of earth, broken tools, a forgotten sandal, these vanish in the current, evidence of work and carelessness alike. It takes only a few minutes for the problems to begin. The embankment, patted down and shaped for weeks, trembles as the first surge passes. In places, water seeps through cracks and old rabbit holes, creating muddy trickles that widen with each heartbeat. A cry goes up at the far end of your section, a breach. Half a dozen men rush to plug it, tossing baskets of earth and rock into the gap. You join them, your feet sliding in the mud, the cold spray stinging your face. For a while, it looks hopeless. Then the water finds another route, cutting a new channel away from the breach, as if it too is tired of the plan. There are moments of calm between each disaster. The water settles into its course, filling the trench with a deceptive sense of order. The surface reflects the sky, dotted with floating leaves and the shadows of exhausted workers. For a brief time, you almost understand the pride the engineers feel. The canal looks like a real river, and for once, something has gone according to plan. But the calm does not last. As the water moves farther down the line, new troubles emerge. At a low spot, the current overflows, flooding a field of half-finished work. The youngest workers, sent to watch the banks, scramble out of the way, but not everyone is quick enough. You see a boy swept off his feet, shouting for help as the current drags him toward a stand of reeds. Two men pull him free, coughing and shivering, their clothes plastered with mud. The water, it turns out, is an unforgiving inspector. It reveals every mistake, every shortcut taken to meet a quota or appease an overseer. Weak walls buckle, rough patches erode, and every flaw is magnified by the relentless current. The engineers bark orders, supervisors shout, and the laborers do what they have always done: dig, haul, patch, and pray for the day to end. By nightfall, the test run is called a success. The water now runs, more or less, where it is meant to go. The breaches are patched, the embankments shored up with baskets of clay and hope. The master engineer proclaims the day historic, his voice echoing off the battered walls of the work camp. No one cheers. The workers are too tired, too cold, and too aware of how close everything came to disaster. You lie awake that night, listening to the water's muffled rush. It sounds nothing like the rivers you remember from home: clear, narrow, winding through fields of rice and wildflowers. This water is impatient, heavy, and hungry for progress. It does not care about the men who made its path, only about the space that lies ahead. The next morning, you see the aftermath. Mud clings to every surface, and the battered embankment is pockmarked with patches and hasty repairs. The tools lost to the current are gone for good, sucked away to some hidden bend or buried under silt. The workers who fell in are left with bruises, coughs, and a new wariness of the canal's unpredictable mood. Still, the engineers are pleased. They have charts to show, numbers to report, and evidence that the grand plan is working, at least on paper. The overseers talk of opening longer sections, of running water all the way from the southern river to the northern one. More work, more risk, more chances for the water to win. The water moves, and so must you. There are breaches to fill, banks to raise, new stretches to carve from stubborn earth. If you stop for a moment and listen, you can almost hear the canal thinking, planning its next escape, daring you to keep up. You return to work, mud-soaked and wary, knowing that the canal is alive now. And just like everyone else in this place, it is hungry, restless, and entirely uninterested in your comfort or safety. Death, like mud, becomes something ordinary on the canal. At first, it is a shock, each loss heavy, each absence a tear in the fabric of the camp. But the canal teaches you quickly. Death is not an event here. It is part of the daily routine, as regular and predictable as hunger. No one marks the moment with ceremony. The first time you witness it, you expect wailing or prayers, a cluster of men standing together in shared grief. Instead, there is a quiet, practiced efficiency. A man collapses in the trench, sunstruck or fevered or simply unlucky. It hardly matters. His friends do not shout for a doctor. There is no doctor. They lay him on a scrap of matting, wipe the mud from his face, and look to the foreman. The foreman sighs, marks a line in his book, and gestures for the body to be taken away. If you are close by, you help carry him, one on each end, careful not to drop the load. You do not speak, and neither does the man you carry. The dead do not complain. Sometimes a man dies in his sleep, his breath slowing in the early hours, until it stops entirely. No one notices until roll call. The foreman's only question is whether he can have the blanket back. No sense wasting cloth, he says. The blanket is shaken out and handed to someone else. The dead man is gone before the morning gruel is served. The sick are a constant presence, their slow decline a reminder of how fragile you all are. Some cough for weeks, growing thinner and weaker until they simply do not rise one morning. Others waste away, refusing food, eyes growing distant as if watching the canal from some other, gentler place. You sometimes envy them, though you never say it aloud. There are more dramatic deaths, of course, the ones that serve as lessons. A man caught under a collapsing wall, his screams muffled by wet earth. A young boy, too tired to step aside, trampled by an ox pulling a supply cart. These deaths become stories, told and retold in the evenings, transformed into warnings or, sometimes, bitter jokes. Do not stand too close to the edge, someone will say, and everyone will laugh. You laugh too, because what else is there? The foremen and soldiers keep their own records. You hear them argue at night about numbers. How many workers lost this month? How many replacements coming from the north? To them, death is a logistical problem, no different from lost tools or broken carts. The only question is whether the work can continue without an interruption. If the numbers are bad, the rations shrink. If the numbers are good, nothing changes. The burial ground is a low hill behind the camp, marked by nothing more than churned earth and a scattering of stones. The grave diggers, men too sick or too old for hard labor, do their work with the same indifference as the cooks or the tool menders. A shallow hole, a few words muttered for form's sake, and the body is covered. Sometimes a stick or a scrap of cloth is left as a marker, but more often there is nothing at all. You wonder if anyone will remember the names of the dead. Sometimes Lou tries to keep a tally, a scratched list on the back of a bamboo slip, a name, a place of origin, a guess at the cause. The list is already smudged and fading. No one lasts forever, Lou says. Not here. You nod and say nothing. There are no memorials, no funerary rites, no letters sent home. The canal swallows its victims without remorse. You know that. In the villages far away, mothers and wives wait for news that never comes. Perhaps they will light incense and whisper prayers, never knowing that their loved one lies nameless beneath a thin skin of dirt. At night, the camp is filled with quiet, less the silence of peace, more the exhaustion of men who have seen too much. You find yourself staying into the darkness, counting the breaths of those nearby, afraid to sleep in case you do not wake. Sometimes you dream of home. Sometimes you dream of the dead. In both dreams, you wake with a hollow ache. Death does not stop the work. The canal demands its daily quota of earthen bodies. New arrivals replace the lost, wide-eyed and hopeful, their hands still soft, their laughter still easy. They learn soon enough, You watch them the way the foreman watches all of you, with the cold eye of someone who has already seen how the story ends. There is a grim camaraderie among the survivors. You trade stories, share what little food you have, and try to remember the names of those who have vanished. It is a way to hold on to your own name, your own place in a world that wants only to forget you. The canal grows longer, deeper, more dangerous. The list of the dead grows with it, each name another stone in its foundation. You tell yourself you are not afraid, but the truth is, you have simply run out of fear. In the end, death is just another part of the job, inevitable, unimpressive, quickly forgotten. The canal remembers nothing, only you do, and even that memory fades with each new dawn. If there is one thing that grows as steadily as the canal itself, it is rumor. Facts are rationed here, doled out in dry notices and barked orders, but stories are everywhere. Stories fill the cracks that truth cannot reach, leaking through the camp at night, clinging to the edges of every conversation. By day, you work with your head down. By night, you listen. The canal is fertile ground for myth. Every trench has its secret, every bend its haunting. You soon learn the stories by heart, even if you pretend not to care. Some tales are harmless, meant to pass the time or poke fun at a foreman's expense. Others are darker, fed by hunger, exhaustion, and the steady drip of loss that never quite dries up. There is the story of the White Lady, an old widow whose son died in the first season of digging. They say her spirit lingers by the unfinished lock, calling for lost children in the fog. No one claims to have seen her, but plenty claim to have heard her, a low, thin wailing on the coldest nights, just at the edge of sleep. The new boys laugh and roll their eyes, but the old hands sleep with their faces covered, just in case. Some whisper about the black ox, a beast of burden that broke its tether during a storm and drowned in the canal. Now it wanders the banks on moonless nights, eyes glowing, hooves silent. If you see it, you must not run. If you do, you will vanish into the water before morning. The legend is useful for keeping men close to camp after dark and for explaining the footprints sometimes found along the embankment, leading nowhere. The most popular tales are about the restless dead, workers swallowed by mud or fever, too many to count, too few to remember by name. Some say the canal is cursed, haunted by thousands of angry souls who died for the emperor's ambition. When the wind blows a certain way, you can almost believe it. The moans from the sick tents, the sudden cold that creeps through even the thickest blanket, the sense that something unseen is always watching from the shadows. There are practical superstitions, too. If your shovel breaks on the first dig of the day, you should stop and spit into the dirt, or you risk bad luck for a week. If you find a button or a scrap of red cloth while working, you must bury it immediately. It is a warning from the river spirits. If you cut yourself and the blood falls into the canal, you are supposed to whisper your mother's name 3 times to keep the fever away. You do all these things, not because you believe, but because you cannot afford to risk being wrong. Sometimes the stories are less about ghosts and more about the living. The cooks have their own tales of a man who snuck into the supply tent at midnight and was never seen again, of a foreman who hoards flour under his bed, of soldiers who trade extra rations for a night of good luck with the dice. The less said about the soldiers' stories, the better. Those who listen too closely risk a beating, or worse. The myths serve a purpose. They bind the workers together, give shape to the fear that would otherwise gnaw in silence. Around the evening fires, the stories grow larger, each teller trying to outdo the last. A runaway who turned into a willow tree, a fever dream in which the canal ran backward, spilling gold coins instead of water, a boy who dug so well that the emperor appeared in his dream to promise him a place at court, only for the boy to wake with mud in his mouth and his hands frozen stiff. The soldiers and overseers scoff at the rumors, warning that idle talk leads to idleness itself. But even they are not immune. You have seen a sergeant pause before crossing a shadow, mutter a prayer before eating, or avoid the corner of camp where a worker died last week. Fear, you realize, is democratic. It needs no titles. When someone goes missing, the stories flare up again. If a body is not found, it is easier to believe in spirits than in simple, brutal misfortune. The canal takes what it is owed, Lou says once, watching the water swirl. You nod, unsure whether he means it as a joke or a warning. There are nights when you cannot sleep, and the stories crawl out from their hiding places. Every rustle in the reeds is the white lady. Every cold shiver is a ghost's touch. Every nightmare is another worker lost to the mud, reaching for your hand. You find yourself whispering old prayers, the ones you forgot before you came here. Still, the myths cannot hide the real terrors: hunger, fever, accident, and the slow grinding down of spirit that no ghost can match. But they help. They turn the canal from a machine for swallowing lives into a place where anything might happen, for better or for worse. They give you a vocabulary for things you cannot name, a way to share fear and still feel, somehow, alive. And so, as the canal grows longer and the nights stretch ever farther, you hold the stories close. They are your armor against the dark, your last resistance against the silence that waits at the water's edge. News arrives at dawn, carried on the breathless lips of a junior overseer who has never run so fast in his life. An imperial inspector is coming. The message spreads faster than any fever, more certain than rain. By midday, every man, woman, and child in the camp knows, and the entire world has changed. Imperial visits are rare and terrible events. They do not bring relief or reward. Instead, they bring panic. The camp, always teetering on the edge of chaos, becomes a theater. Suddenly, everyone has a role to play. The worst sections of canal must be hidden. The best, if best, means least dangerous or most recently patched, must be polished and put on display. It is as if a palace is being built overnight in a swamp. You are roused from sleep earlier than usual. The foremen and their lieutenants storm through the tents, barking orders, inspecting hands, shoving new rags into the filthiest clothes. Make yourselves look presentable, they say, as if dirt is a sin and mud can be washed away by threats. The cooks receive extra supplies for the first time in months. For a moment, the air is rich with the scent of garlic, ginger, and something that might even be meat. You eat quickly before anyone thinks better of it. Soon, the camp is a blur of frantic motion. Ditches are covered with mats, half finished trenches disguised with woven reeds and old banners. Workers are assigned to the model site, a stretch of canal that by some miracle has not collapsed in the past week. The unlucky are sent to the outskirts, their only job to remain invisible. If the inspector sees too many sick or maimed, there will be questions, and the answers will be costly. You spend the morning digging and smoothing, painting mud walls with river water to make them look solid. Supervisors wander by, muttering about discipline and presentation. Soldiers polish their helmets, the dust settling back as soon as they turn away. The old and the dying are sent to a hut behind the kitchens, as if silence and shadow can erase their existence. Liu, his limp now too obvious, is ordered to supervise supplies. You wish him luck. By midday, the imperial entourage arrives, heralded by the metallic clang of gongs and the scent of horse sweat. There are banners, of course, bright red and yellow, unfaded by the sun. The inspector himself rides in a sedan chair, carried by four strong men who have never seen a shovel. He wears robes of silk, his skin pale and untouched by the weather. His face is unreadable, trained to display neither pleasure nor disgust. Around him swarm scribes, bodyguards, and minor officials, all eager to be noticed, all terrified of being blamed. The inspection is a ritual. The inspector stands at the model site, nodding gravely as the chief engineer explains the historic progress. Charts are unrolled, models are displayed, numbers are recited in a torrent. You listen from a safe distance, amazed at the confidence with which failure is described as innovation and near disaster as opportunity. The inspector nods, frowns at the appropriate moments, and occasionally gestures for his scribe to make a note. No one mentions the collapses, the dead, the months of lost work. The workers are called forward, a carefully chosen handful, the healthiest, the most obedient, the least likely to say something inconvenient. You are not chosen. Your hands are too raw, your eyes too hollow, but you watch as your stand ins bow and thank the inspector for his benevolence. It is a performance for the records. The scribe writes down every word, never looking up. For the rest of the day, the camp holds its breath. Any mistake, any accident could lead to a reckoning. The soldiers are more alert than ever, their eyes sharp, their voices cold. The overseers smile too broadly, their fear as obvious as their insincerity. In the kitchens, extra food is doled out with trembling hands, and the children are told to play quietly and stay out of sight. Evening comes, and the inspection moves to the supervisor's tent for a banquet. There is rice, fresh fruit, real meat. The inspector samples everything, nodding with imperial detachment, never finishing a dish. You catch glimpses of the leftovers, enough to feed the camp for a week, thrown into the waste pits. The old hands say it is better not to watch. At last, the inspector stands, gives a short speech about duty, sacrifice, and the greatness of the empire. The workers are praised for their resilience, the soldiers for their vigilance, the overseers for their leadership. The canal, he declares, is a wonder of the world, a testament to the wisdom of the emperor and the strength of his people. The scribes clap politely. The rest of you bow your heads, unsure whether to laugh or weep. By midnight, the entourage is gone. The banners are rolled up, the gongs silenced. The next day, the extra rations vanish. The old and sick return from hiding, and the model site is quickly indistinguishable from the rest, muddy, broken, patched with hope and resignation. Life on the canal resumes as if nothing happened. Only the memory lingers, a glimpse of a different world, and the reminder that here, the performance never really ends. In the dark, Lou returns from his exile behind the kitchens. He shrugs, his hands empty. He did not even look at me, he says. You understand. The canal is full of things that go unseen. Rain is a constant companion on the canal, sometimes a gentle mist that settles on your skin, sometimes a howling beast that drowns all hope of progress. No one celebrates its arrival. When you hear the first fat drops drumming on the rooftops at dawn, you already know the day is lost. It starts quietly enough. A low sky, bruised and swollen, presses down on the camp. The air turns thick, heavy with the promise of misery. At first, the rain brings a kind of relief, settling the endless dust, masking the smells of sweat and waste. But the relief does not last. The earth quickly transforms, and you find yourself knee-deep in mud, your footsteps lost, your tools heavy, your progress erased by each downpour. The work does not stop for rain. The overseers repeat that the grand plan cannot wait for fair weather. A little water never hurt anyone, they say, shouting from the safety of their covered porches. But the canal disagrees. The trenches fill, the embankments dissolve, and the walls, meticulously patted down and smoothed with river clay, slump and slide away as if they were nothing but dreams. What took weeks to build can vanish in a single afternoon. You and the other workers become swamp creatures, wading through a world that clings to your ankles and threatens to swallow you whole. The youngest are sometimes lost, sucked down by hidden pools, pulled under by the weight of their own soaked clothing. Rescues are dangerous and seldom successful. The water is always cold, always rising, and always hungry. The supervisors develop new routines for rain days. They assign extra guards to the weakest embankments. They organize bucket brigades to scoop water from the lowest points. You join these lines, passing heavy, mud splattered buckets from hand to hand, each one spilling as much as it saves. The effort is both exhausting and absurd. No matter how many buckets you fill, the rain fills twice as many holes. Floods are the canal's most dramatic disasters. The first sign is always the same: a shout from somewhere up the line, a rush of workers running for higher ground. Then comes the roar, a wall of water and debris moving faster than you would think possible through such thick, sticky earth. If you are lucky, you are close to the edge and can scramble to safety. If not, you learn the hard way that mud is heavier than flesh. After each flood, the world is changed. Paths you knew are erased, replaced by chaos. Camps are swept away, supplies buried under silt, carefully built embankments flattened in the blink of an eye. The supervisors pace back and forth, calculating losses. The foremen bark at you to dig new drainage channels, build new walls, work faster, work smarter, work longer. No one asks how you feel about the floods. You are just one more object swept along by the current, easily lost, easily replaced. Some men take it as a challenge, a reason to curse the river and the engineers in equal measure. Others are quieter, their faces growing longer and grayer with every new disaster. The old men remember previous years, worse rains, bigger floods. This is nothing, they say, shaking their heads. You should have seen the season when the canal tried to eat the whole camp. You believe them. You can see the ghosts of old embankments buried in the mud, the half rotted remnants of tents and tools, swallowed and forgotten. Sometimes, when you dig in the wrong place, you find a boot, a scrap of cloth, a bone polished smooth by the water. The rain brings other gifts too. Disease flourishes in the wet. Mosquitoes rise from every stagnant pool, biting with a ferocity that leaves you feverish and itching for days. The cooks can do nothing to keep the rice from spoiling. The air itself seems heavier, pressing you down, making every breath a little harder. Illness becomes common: dysentery, chills, coughs that will not end. Yet, as always, life finds a way to crawl back. As the waters recede, you see green shoots sprouting from the banks, wildflowers tangled with bits of rope and broken baskets. The sun returns, baking the mud into a cracked, hard crust. You and the others set to work again, rebuilding what the floods destroyed, patching the walls, redigging the ditches, pretending that this time it will last. Sometimes you laugh. There is nothing else to do. The futility is so total, so predictable, that it becomes its own kind of joke. You share stories of the worst floods, of the time a supervisor was swept away, cursing and sputtering, his hat found floating miles downstream, of the time a chicken rode a log from one camp to another, arriving featherless but alive, immediately claimed as an omen of good fortune. The chicken did not survive the night. The canal continues to demand. The rain continues to fall. You continue to work, soaked, sore, and stubborn, knowing that there is no dry season here, only a brief pause between storms. The water will return, and with it, the chance to begin again, to lose and find, to build and be swept away. At the end of each flood, you look at what remains: broken walls, scattered belongings, the thin line of men and women ready to start again. The grand plan survives on paper. In the mud, you survive on memory, humor, and the knowledge that, for all its power, the canal cannot drown everything. Not hope, not laughter, not even you. You lose track of the days on the canal. The sun rises, the mud thickens, the work repeats. If not for the phases of the moon, you would not know how the seasons change. Once, life was measured by holidays: a market fair in spring, the Dragon Boat Festival, a new year celebrated with firecrackers and dumplings. Here, the only festival is survival. Rumor, as persistent as the mud, says the overseers are required by law to grant holidays. The more experienced workers laugh at this. The law, Lou tells you, is for the city. Here, time is only divided by work and sleep, hunger and exhaustion, rain and sun. The calendar is a luxury you traded for your shovel. Now and then, someone tries to mark a special day. A slip of paper, a carved stick, a flower plucked from the bank and placed by a tent flap. These small acts are quickly crushed under the weight of necessity. The foremen see any break from routine as dangerous, a spark that could ignite rebellion, or worse, hope. The few times you see someone pause to pray or light incense, it is always done in secret, half glimpsed at dusk or before dawn. New Year arrives with no announcement. You remember how it used to be: a week of red banners, gifts, the rare taste of real meat, laughter from house to house. On the canal, New Year is marked only by the faint scent of incense drifting from the cook tent and a slightly larger ration of rice. The overseer makes a speech about duty and sacrifice. He wishes you prosperity. You almost laugh. One old man, perhaps mad or simply too tired to care, spends the whole day humming festival songs. At first, the younger men are annoyed, but by evening, the tune becomes infectious. A few start to hum along. You almost forget where you are until the foreman shouts for silence and the camp returns to its usual quiet misery. Later, the old man is sent to dig a new latrine pit by himself. When he returns, he no longer sings. The absence of holidays changes you in subtle ways. Your dreams of home are sharper, colored by longing for rituals that once seemed boring. You remember the lanterns, the sound of drums, the taste of sweet rice balls. Here, even the smallest ritual, a shared story, a game of stones, a quiet word at dusk, feels like an act of resistance. Some workers invent their own festivals. Once, after a week of steady work with no deaths, someone declares a feast. There is nothing special to eat, just the usual rice and beans, but the mood is lighter. Men gather, tell stories, slap each other on the back. For a few hours, you are not laborers or numbers. You are a village, a family, a collection of memories refusing to fade. It cannot last. The next day, work resumes, the overseers angry at the lost time, the soldiers watching more closely than usual. You learn to celebrate in silence, to mark your victories and anniversaries in your own mind, unspoken and unseen. You begin to understand why the old men talk to themselves, why the women braid their hair a certain way, why children hoard pebbles and broken bits of pottery. These are the only holidays you get: a minute of stillness, a private memory, a joke whispered when no one else can hear. Sometimes you wonder what the canal would be like if holidays were allowed. Would men work better, dig faster, live longer? Would the ghosts be quieter, the nights less cold? Or would it make no difference at all? The weight of the project too heavy for even a festival to lift? You ask Lou, and he shrugs. The canal is its own holiday, he says, and you both laugh, not because it is funny, but because you have nothing else. As spring turns to summer and summer to autumn, the absence of holidays becomes a kind of background noise. You stop expecting change, stop waiting for something to break the rhythm. Each day is a copy of the last, each meal the same as the next. But somewhere deep down, you still count the days. You remember the taste of dumplings, the feel of new clothes, the sound of laughter in the street. You know that if you ever leave the canal, the holidays will return. They will feel different, sharper, more precious. Until then, you make do with stolen moments: a sunset over the muddy water, the quiet companionship of another worker, the warmth of a shared blanket on a cold night. These are your new holidays, brief, hidden, and always in danger of being taken away. And so, the canal rolls on. The empire celebrates its victories with parades and feasts far away, while here you dig and sleep and remember. The only fireworks are lightning in a distant storm. The only festival drum is the steady thud of shovels in the earth. If you want to survive the canal, you learn to pay attention to people. Mud and water are dangerous, but loneliness will sink you just as fast. In the shifting chaos of camps and work gangs, new faces arrive and disappear almost daily. Out of this swirling mass, bonds are formed and broken, sometimes in a single afternoon. You do not choose your companions. The foremen assign work teams according to the whims of numbers: who is healthy, who is expendable, who has not angered a supervisor this week. At first, you are surrounded by strangers: a silent boy from the mountains, an old woman with hands like tree roots, a sharp eyed thief from a city you have only heard about in stories. You keep your head down home, your words few, your trust locked away. But time does strange things to strangers. You share meals, shelter, endless days in the same patch of mud. You learn each other's habits. Who hums to himself when the work is hardest? Who can make a joke out of anything? Who will always give half his food to someone hungrier? Soon you know not just names, but histories, fragments of old lives from 100 distant villages. Liu remains your closest friend. You trust him because he does not ask for trust. You talk in the early hours, sharing memories of home, plans for a future neither of you quite believes in. Sometimes you sit in silence, letting the weight of the day settle between you like an old blanket. Liu is steady, his presence as grounding as the familiar ache in your back. Others drift in and out of your orbit. There is May, whose laughter is sharp as a sparrow's cry, and who can bargain an extra ladle of rice from the angriest cook. There is Jong, quick with a knife and quicker with a story, who claims he once escaped from a chain gang in the West, but returned for reasons he refuses to explain. Some become friends by necessity, a partner to share a blanket, a lookout for a tired shift, a second pair of hands when the wall threatens to collapse. The canal does not allow luxury, but it rewards loyalty, however fleeting. Enemies are easier to make. A wrong word, a borrowed tool never returned, a scrap of food taken in the night. These small things become matters of survival. Old grudges travel from camp to camp, whispered in the dark and shouted in the daylight. The sharp-eyed thief steals from you once. You never trust him again. The foreman who beats a sick worker for slowing down becomes an enemy to everyone, though few dare say it aloud. The overseers encourage suspicion. They warn that spies are everywhere, that anyone might report you for a missed shift, a whispered complaint, a forbidden game of dice. Sometimes a man vanishes and rumors fly. Was he taken by the fever or by the soldiers? Did he escape or was he betrayed by a friend? You watch what you say, even to Lu. Trust is precious and dangerous, a coin spent only in emergencies. Fights break out, always for the same reasons: food, rest, the endless friction of so many desperate people crammed into the same muddy world. Sometimes fists fly, sometimes words cut deeper. The soldiers punish violence with violence of their own, but rarely do more than move the troublemakers to a new section of the canal. Everyone is useful until they are not. Still, the need for allies is stronger than the fear of enemies. You learn who will share water when the wells run low, who will warn you of a new supervisor's bad temper, who will sit with you through a fever and not steal your food while you sleep. You are not family, but you are more than strangers. The canal makes a tribe of survivors. One evening, a new man arrives, eyes wary, hands wrapped in rags. He does not speak for days, but you watch as Lou offers him a seat by the fire and a share of beans. Gradually, he joins your circle, first in silence, then with a soft story of his village and the river that drowned his home. His name is lost to time, but you call him River, and it sticks. With friends, the world feels a little less cruel. Jokes are shared, memories traded, hopes whispered with just enough conviction to sound real. The worst days, those of flood or hunger, illness or punishment, are easier to bear when you do not face them alone. Sometimes you even forget for a few hours that the canal is a prison, but enemies are always close behind. Supervisors who punish out of boredom, cooks who steal the best food for their favorites, soldiers who take pleasure in searching tents, breaking what little you have left. Old wounds fester, alliances shift. The ground underfoot is never stable, and neither are friendships. You learn to let go quickly, to forgive slowly, to keep your secrets close. Sometimes you wonder how it is possible to feel such hatred and such gratitude in the same day for the same people. But the canal is a world unto itself, a place where the line between friend and foe is as thin as a rope over water. Every bond is forged in necessity, every betrayal expected if not accepted. At night, you count your blessings: a shared meal, a saved tool, a joke that makes you forget the ache in your bones. Tomorrow, you may be alone again, or surrounded by friends, or face to face with old enemies. The only certainty is that the canal goes on, and you go on with it, carried by the fragile ties you make and break each day. The day the first caravan is scheduled to pass through your stretch of the canal, everything changes and nothing does. For weeks, rumors have swirled. The canal is ready. The engineers have declared victory, and the imperial inspectors will finally witness proof of the canal's promise. In the workers' camp, the news is met with a mixture of exhaustion, skepticism, and a stubborn flicker of pride. You are told, in tones both triumphant and threatening, that this is the dawn of a new era. You try to care. The preparations begin before sunrise. Overseers bark orders louder than usual. Soldiers pace the banks with fresh clubs and stiff uniforms. The model section of the canal is scrubbed and shored up again, the same patch you have rebuilt half a dozen times already. Banners are dragged from storage, their colors faded, their cloth heavy with old dust. For once the cooks are given something special, a cauldron of real pork bones for the stew. The air smells almost festive, which is to say unfamiliar. Workers are lined up along the water's edge, shovels and baskets neatly stacked, faces washed as best as river water and mud allow. You stand shoulder to shoulder with Lou and River and May, each of you squinting at the slow current for signs of the promised caravan. Most of you expect disaster, a collapsed bank, a stranded barge, some flaw in the grand plan laid bare before the eyes of every official in the region. For some reason, the engineers look more nervous than anyone. At mid morning, the first boats appear, a line of narrow, shallow bottomed barges loaded with crates and sacks. You are told the cargo is rice, silk, and salt, the wealth of the South bound for the hungry cities of the North. The barges are rowed by sweating men who look not much better off than you, though their hats are fancier. The lead barge flies a flag so bright you have to shield your eyes. The supervisors hurry to their stations, faces stretched into forced smiles. The inspector, the same pale man from the last visit, stands on the shore with his scribe and waves as if he had anything to do with the canal's existence. The master engineer gives a speech about destiny and unity and the glory of the empire, his words carried away by the morning breeze. The boats enter your section of the canal with more caution than ceremony. For a moment, it almost feels impressive. The new waterway carrying its first official caravan, the mud and sweat of years finally serving a higher purpose. Some workers even cheer, half out of habit, half out of a real, sharp relief. You do not cheer, but you watch, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, waiting for the catch. It does not take long. The first barge scrapes a hidden bank, tilting dangerously. The rowers curse and scramble to push it free. The inspector's smile freezes, the engineers pale. A frantic few minutes later, the barge is loose, leaving behind a trail of shredded reeds and an embarrassed silence. The next boat passes more smoothly, and so does the third. The worst does not happen, at least not here, not today. As the last boat clears your section, the overseers relax, their shoulders dropping. The workers are ordered to wave and smile, which most do with the flat enthusiasm of men who know the performance matters more than reality. The inspector declares the passage a great success. The master engineer beams, and the soldiers go back to their posts. You and Lou sit on the bank, feet dangling in the murky water, watching as the banners recede into the distance. That's it? Lou asks, half a grin on his face. Years of digging, and all we get is a parade of rice sacks? River snorts. Better than a parade of corpses. May shrugs, licking a scrap of pork from her fingers, more interested in the rare taste of fat than in the empire's destiny. You find yourself unsure what to feel. There is a sense of accomplishment, yes, but it is mingled with resentment, exhaustion, and the knowledge that tomorrow you will be back in the trench, shoveling the same mud as always. As the sun sets, the camp is restless. The rumor mill spins new tales. One barge lost a crate to the current. Another ran aground further north, holding up the whole convoy. The inspector, red-faced and sweating, was heard cursing the engineers for hours. The facts hardly matter. What matters is that, for one day, the work stopped. For one day, you witnessed the canal as more than a grave for hope and labor. It is, briefly, a working river. No one is fooled. The canal is not finished. There are still weak banks to shore up, sections to dig, new disasters lurking with every change in the weather. But the parade of barges, clumsy, awkward, and strangely beautiful, lingers in your mind. You remember the pride in Lou's voice, the stubborn grin on River's face, the laughter that rippled up and down the muddy bank. Maybe it is not much, but it is yours. The officials depart with their banners and speeches, promising better days ahead. You return to your tent, sore, sunburned, and strangely empty. The first caravan has come and gone, and the world is the same as before, only now you have a story to tell. That night, you fall asleep to the sound of distant drums and the quiet murmur of the canal. For a moment, you almost believe it all mattered. After the first caravan passes, you expect something to change. Not much, perhaps, but enough to notice. A little less urgency in the orders, a little more food in the pot, a sense that the endless digging might finally be nearing its end. For a day or two, there is talk in the camp. Maybe the Emperor's promise will reach even here. Maybe the workers will finally be allowed to rest, to go home, to become men and women again, not mud caked tools of the grand plan. Hope lasts until sunrise. By the third morning, the overseers are already making new lists. There are more sections of canal to dig, more banks to raise, more embankments to patch before the next flood. The engineer's charts, now marked with triumphant red lines for the completed route, sprout new notes in the margins. Expand here, reinforce there, widen everywhere. Word comes from the north. There will be new caravans soon, bigger and heavier. The canal must be stronger, you realize, with a sinking heart, that you have not built an ending. You have built the next beginning. The older workers knew all along. You watch their faces as the new work orders arrive. No surprise, just resignation. Some men have been here so long they have forgotten the shape of their old lives. Their stories are about the canal, funny mishaps, quiet tragedies, moments of luck and mercy. You wonder if you will ever have stories about anything else. A few do leave, the lucky ones, men who survived their quota, who have no enemies among the foremen, whose bodies have not yet failed. They gather their rags and tokens, say quiet farewells, and walk out under the eyes of the soldiers. There is no celebration. Most simply disappear, their place filled the same day by someone new. Sometimes rumors drift back. One made it home and bought a field. One drowned on the road. One joined a band of vagrants by the river, forever a wanderer. The rest of you stay. You keep digging because there is nothing else. The pay, if it ever comes, is not enough to leave. The promises of land or reward are as thin as the gruel in your bowl. Some workers are transferred to new projects, new sections of the canal, or entirely new rivers the empire wishes to tame. Promotion, the overseers call it. It feels more like exile. Some cope by surrendering to routine. The world becomes simple. Dig, eat, sleep, repeat. Your hands grow calloused. Your back bends. Your eyes learn to ignore suffering unless it is your own. When a new arrival asks you how long you have been here, you shrug. Time means nothing, only survival. You do not tell them about the days you considered running, or about the nights you lay awake, counting the breaths of those who might not wake up. Some truths are too heavy to share. Others find small ways to rebel. They smuggle letters to family, steal an hour's sleep behind the embankment, hide a handful of beans in the lining of a shirt. Some try to teach the children who wander through the camp, passing on stories or lessons in reading and numbers. A few slip away for good, taking their chances with the soldiers, the river, the hunger that waits outside the canal's borders. Most are caught and returned. their hope battered but not completely broken. And still, the canal demands. The foremen change, but the rules remain. The engineers come and go, but their plans get bigger, never smaller. You hear talk of new inventions, stronger locks, deeper channels, faster barges. You wonder if the day will come when even the river itself is bored, when all the work is done and there is nothing left to build. As for you, life becomes a series of half promises and brief joys. The warmth of a fire after a wet day, the taste of real meat, rare as a festival, the comfort of Lou's laughter, River's patience, May's quick wit. Friends become family, enemies become tolerable, and the canal, the endless, insatiable canal, becomes your world. You do not forget the men and women who have vanished. Sometimes at night, you find yourself whispering their names, trying to hold on to something real. The burial ground behind the camp grows larger, but fewer notice it now. The living have enough to carry. In the end, the only thing that truly changes is your own endurance. You do not break, not quite. You do not escape, not yet. You continue day after day, shovel after shovel, becoming part of the canal itself, worn smooth, shaped by time, essential but invisible. The canal is finished, they say, but the work is never done. For the workers, there is no grand moment of triumph, no parade, no reward, only the knowledge that the world is a little more connected and that the cost of unity is measured in lives just like yours. You are still here. You wake, as always, before sunrise. Your hands remember the shape of the shovel before your mind remembers your name. You eat, you work, you listen to the water. The canal stretches away on either side, longer now, deeper, wider. Barges pass in a slow parade, loaded with rice, silk, salt, people, and stories. Some of these stories, you realize, are yours. You are a part of history. That is what they tell you in the rare moments when the overseers are in the mood for speeches. The empire will remember you. The water will remember you. The canal, you suspect, remembers nothing but the weight of earth and the endless thud of shovels. Your own memories, meanwhile, grow thin and worn, like a favorite shirt patched too many times. Sometimes you wonder if you have simply become another stone in the embankment, useful, silent, easily replaced. The legacy of the canal is everywhere, but it is rarely yours to claim. You see it in the caravans that glide past your camp, the soldiers who have grown old beside you, the engineers who come and go, carrying fresh scrolls and grander plans. You see it in the markets, the fields, the distant cities, places your labor reaches, but you never will. You hear it in rumors that grain is cheaper in the north now, that salt travels farther, that the empire is richer and stronger, thanks to the water you shaped with your own blistered hands. No one asks about the price. No one lists the names of the men and women who vanished into the mud, the bodies lost to fever, accident, hunger, or despair. If you speak of them at all, it is only in whispers at night, when the camp grows quiet and the canal's surface is still as a grave. You remember Lou's stubbornness, May's laughter, River's soft singing, the stories told and retold as if repetition could keep the dead alive. There are moments, unexpected, uninvited, when you feel a strange, twisted pride. The canal exists. It endures. Against all reason, it works. For all its cruelty and chaos, it connects worlds that would otherwise have stayed strangers. You stand at its edge, watching the ripples stretch north and south, and know that your life has changed something, even if no one will ever say your name. But there is also bitterness. The canal demanded everything: your strength, your years, your friends, your future. In return, it offers only survival and the slow, invisible satisfaction of a job done too well to be remembered. You are no hero, no sage, no founder. You are a function of imperial hunger, a solution to someone else's problem. Sometimes you try to imagine what it means to leave. Some workers do. They limp home with scars and stories no one quite believes. Some become overseers themselves, trading mud for a little power, a little comfort. Some drift along the canal, never quite belonging to any place, not even their own memories. You picture yourself walking away, back to your village, back to your family, back to a world that has already moved on without you. But you remain, unable or unwilling to step out of the flow you helped create. You become a legend in miniature, the man who saw the water rise, who patched the breach with his own hands, who taught a dozen boys how to dig, who outlasted the fevers and the floods. Children stare as you pass. Old women nod. The new workers listen, half bored, half awed, as you recount the disasters and small victories of a canal that is both miracle and curse. No one ever asks you what it cost. On rare, quiet evenings, you walk along the embankment, tracing the path of the moon in the water. You count the things the canal gave you: friends, knowledge, a strange and battered dignity. You count what it took, more than you care to remember. You realize you are both prisoner and architect, both survivor and witness. History, it turns out, is built not by emperors, but by men who had no choice but to dig. If you are lucky, you grow old by the canal. You become part of its scenery, a familiar silhouette in the morning mist, a voice in the dark telling stories no one else remembers. You teach the new arrivals how to bind their hands, how to read the weather, how to hide a sliver of food for lean days. You tell them not to be proud, not to be bitter, not to expect justice. The canal gives nothing freely and takes whatever it wants. Yet, in spite of everything, you tell them you will endure. We all do for a while. Sometimes you dream of the world before the canal. Sometimes you dream of a world after. Most nights you sleep with the steady sound of water in your ears, and you know this too is a kind of legacy: to endure, to remember, to leave something behind even when no one remembers your name. Tomorrow you will rise before the sun. The water will flow, the work will go on, the canal will outlast you and everyone you have ever known. And so, with an aching back and a quiet heart, you leave your mark, not with banners or monuments, but with every shovel of earth moved, every breath drawn beside the water, every stubborn heartbeat that outlasted the empire's dreams. You are the canal, and the canal is you, unfinished, enduring, essential, and unseen.